What do you do when life turns against you? When even the people closest to you say, God can't help you now? What do you say when your enemies are many and your strength is gone? Psalm 3 isn't just a prayer. It's the cry of a wounded warrior. It's David running from his own son, betrayed, hunted. But this psalm shows us something powerful. You can be under attack and still be under God's protection. You can be surrounded and still stand secure, because the battle isn't always outside you. Sometimes it's inside your heart. And in that place, God becomes your shield. Verse 1, Psalm 3, Lord, how are they increased that trouble me? Many are they that rise up against me. This is not the voice of a man sitting on a throne. It's the cry of a man fleeing for his life, barefoot and broken. This is David, once the celebrated king, now a hunted father, betrayed by his own son. And he doesn't sugarcoat the pain. He doesn't pretend to be strong. He opens his soul and says what many of us are afraid to admit. Lord, it's getting worse. The enemies are multiplying, the pressure is rising. It's not just a bad day, it's a total collapse. The people he once led now chase him. The kingdom he once ruled now rejects him. The voices that once cheered now accuse. Have you ever felt that? When the people closest to you turn their back? When the battles don't show up one by one, they swarm you like a storm with no warning? That's where David is, and that's where some of us are. Not just attacked, but surrounded. Not just tired, but outnumbered. And the worst part, it's not strangers. It's familiar voices. People you trusted, people you loved, people who knew your heart and still rose up against you. But even in the weight of all that sorrow, David begins with one word that changes everything. Lord. Not why, not how could you, but Lord. That one word is a lifeline in the flood. That one name is the anchor when everything is spinning out of control. He doesn't start with the problem, he starts with the presence. Because even when everything is wrong, the right response is still worship. Even when he's weeping, he's reaching for heaven. And maybe that's where healing begins, not when the trouble stops, but when the cry turns upward. This verse is not polished. It's raw. It's unfiltered grief. It's the sound of a warrior crushed under the weight of betrayal. But it's also the sound of faith that refuses to die. Because when you cry out to God, not out of routine, but out of desperation, He hears you. He catches every word soaked in tears. And just like David, you don't need a perfect prayer. You just need a surrendered heart. So if you're there, if you feel surrounded, abandoned, overwhelmed, don't hide it. Don't fake it. Start like David did. Fall to your knees and say, Lord, it's getting worse. That's not a complaint. That's trust in disguise. That's what faith looks like when it's bleeding. And that's the kind of honesty that heaven always answers. Because the God who hears your groaning is the same God who will lift your head. Keep watching. This psalm doesn't end in defeat. It begins in brokenness, but it rises in power. And so will you. Verse 2. Many there be which say of my soul, there is no help for him in God. See, there's a kind of pain that goes deeper than wounds. It's not in the body, it's in the spirit. It's when the battle isn't just outside of you, but inside your very soul. That's where David was. He wasn't just running from his enemies, he was bleeding from betrayal. And the people around him? They didn't just say he was losing, they said God had left him. They looked at his broken crown, his weary eyes, the dirt on his hands, and they said, even God won't help you now. Can you imagine the weight of that? The heaviness of hearing people declare that your connection with heaven has been cut, that your mistakes have made you unworthy, that your fall has made you unlovable. And maybe you've heard that too. Maybe not out loud, but in the silence of your room, in the middle of the night, in the middle of the pain. That voice that whispers, "You messed up too bad this time. You knew better. You failed again. You're too far gone." And it feels like it's not just people saying it. It feels like even your own soul agrees. Like your heart is collapsing under shame and you want to believe and hope, but it's so quiet now, so still. And the noise of condemnation is too loud. It tells you God's done with you, that the grace you once held is now out of reach, that He helped you before, but not this time, not now. But then, Selah, a divine pause, a holy interruption in the middle of the storm, right after the accusations, right after the shame. Before anything else is said, heaven says, wait. Don't rush past this. Don't skip the silence. Don't move so fast to defend yourself or fix yourself or explain everything away. Just stop. Let the weight of that moment sit with you. Let your soul breathe. Selah is not the end, it's the turning point. It's where everything pauses. Not because it's over, but because something is about to shift. It's God saying, hold on, I'm not finished yet. You see, what others declare over your life is not the final word. Even what you've declared over yourself, your guilt, your regret, your fear, it doesn't hold eternal authority. God does. And Selah reminds us of that. Selah is the space between despair and deliverance, between judgment and mercy, between the lie that says there's no help for you and the truth that says, I am your help, your shield, your glory, the lifter of your head. So if you're sitting in a moment where everyone's given up on you, where you've even started giving up on yourself, this verse isn't here to condemn you. It's here to meet you right in the middle of the wreckage, right in the dark, right where people said it's too late. Because the most powerful thing about Selah is that it breaks the narrative. It creates space for God to speak again. And when He speaks, everything changes. So breathe, child of God. Don't run past the pause. Let it wash over you. Let it interrupt the spiral of shame. Selah is not silence. It's sacred. It's the breath before the breakthrough, the hush before the healing. And God still writes stories that rise from moments like this. Selah, verse 3. But thou, O Lord, art a shield for me, my glory, and the lifter up of mine head. But thou, this is the sacred shift, the holy turning point. Right here, everything changes, not because the enemies disappear, not because the storm calms, but because the focus changes. From fear to faith, from collapse to confidence. David doesn't deny the pain. He doesn't downplay the pressure. He's still on the run, still betrayed, still surrounded. But in the middle of all that grief, he dares to speak two powerful words. But thou. When the world says, it's over. When people whisper, you're too far gone. When the enemy mocks, even God won't help you now. David lifts his voice, not to the crowd, not to his critics, not even to himself, but to God. But thou, O Lord, you are my shield. Not just a shield that covers the front, not just something I hold up. No, you surround me. A shield on every side. Above me when I fall, behind me when I flee, beside me when I tremble. When life feels like arrows are flying from every angle, when anxiety shoots from the future and shame rises from the past, you, Lord, are my shield. And more than that, you are my glory, not my crown, not my reputation, not my title. Those things can be taken, stripped, tarnished. But when people try to take away my worth, you remain my glory. when shame tries to silence me, when guilt tries to own me, when memories scream, "You're not enough," you say, "I am your worth." And then comes the most tender part, the lifter of my head. Because let's be real, when you're in despair, your head drops, your posture curls in, your voice gets quiet, your hope disappears. You can't even lift your face anymore. But God doesn't wait for you to fix your posture. He reaches in gently, and He lifts your head, not with shame, not with force, but with love. He looks you in the eyes and says, "You're still mine. You're not too broken. I still see you. Get up, child. Look at me." This is more than poetry. This is what it feels like to be rescued in the dark, to be held when everything falls, to be reminded, I'm not alone in this cave. I'm not forgotten in this pain. I'm not unworthy of restoration. David starts Psalm 3 in tears. But here is where the trembling becomes trust. Here is where his voice finds volume again. Not because the situation has changed, but because his heart is turning. This is what it looks like to choose faith in the valley. To remember who God is when everything else failed. To say, yes, my enemies are many. Yes, I feel weak. Yes, I've been wounded. But Thou, O Lord, that's the power of a pause in the storm. That's the shift from panic to praise. That's the holy rise, when brokenness meets belief. And maybe that's where you are right now. Crying, doubting, collapsing. And if you can't say anything else, just whisper this. But Thou, O Lord, let that be the beginning of your rise again. Verse 4. I cried unto the Lord with my voice, and He heard me out of His holy hill, Selah. David didn't whisper this one. He didn't journal it in silence. He cried out loud from the pit of his pain. He cried unto the Lord with his voice, not a whisper, not a mental note, but a wail, a groan, a sound that came from a man who had nothing left to hold on to but God Himself. His own son was hunting him. His people had turned. His throne was gone. And when everything else was stripped away, his voice remained. So he used it. He cried out, not to man, not to soldiers, not to his old counselors, but to the Lord, to the only one who could meet him in that valley of collapse. And God heard him. Let that settle in. He heard him. Not from the hiding place David was in, but from the holy hill, from Zion, from the throne room of heaven, from the seat of power where the King of Kings reigns eternal. God heard the cry of a broken man. Do you see the beauty? David was running, rejected, and ruined in the eyes of the world, but heaven didn't echo that opinion. God wasn't distant. He wasn't indifferent. He wasn't annoyed by the noise of David's grief. He heard him, and if He heard David, He can hear you. Because let's be real, some cries don't sound pretty. Sometimes your prayer is just a breath between sobs. Sometimes your amen is swallowed by the weight of shame, and sometimes all you can do is say, God, please. But here's the miracle. He still hears. He hears through the tears, through the stuttering, through the silence that follows pain too deep for words. He hears you. From His holy hill, He hears the prayers that never made it to Instagram, the midnight tears, the bathroom breakdowns, the honest, ugly, sacred moments of desperation. And then comes that word again. Selah. Pause. Breathe. Don't rush past this. Let it hit your heart. He heard me. The King of Glory, the Ancient of Days, the God of the universe, heard me. Not the me I pretend to be, not the filtered version, but the wrecked me. The me that didn't have it together, the me that cried out in a whisper, hoping someone, anyone was still listening. And heaven answered. This is what makes the faith rise again. Not because the situation is fixed yet, but because the silence is broken. You're not alone in this valley. You're not abandoned in your exile. Your voice doesn't bounce off the ceiling and disappear. Your cry is caught in the hands of God. He heard you. So cry if you must, break if you need to, but don't ever believe the lie that says God's too far. Because the holy hill isn't miles away. It's closer than your next breath. And the throne is not too high to hear the cry of a lowly heart. So let that truth sit deep in your chest. You were heard, you are still heard. And heaven is answering. Verse 5, Psalm 3. I laid me down and slept, I awaked, for the Lord sustained me. How do you sleep when your whole world is crashing down? When the people you trusted have turned their backs? When the ones who once stood beside you now stand against you? David didn't just lose a battle, he lost his home, his throne, his own son. He was running for his life, surrounded by enemies, burdened by heartbreak, and in the middle of that storm, he says, I laid me down and slept. Pause and let that sink in. This wasn't the sleep of comfort. This was the sleep of surrender. The kind that only comes when you've cried so hard you can't cry anymore. When your strength is gone, your heart is broken, and all that's left is God. Most of us can't even rest when our phone rings too much. We toss and turn at the thought of bills, diagnoses, loneliness. But David, he slept, with death breathing down his neck, not because everything was fine, but because he put his soul in the hands of the one who never sleeps. That's trust. That's faith in the dark. That's what happens when your confidence is no longer in circumstances, but in a Savior who sustains you through them. He said, I awoke, for the Lord sustained me. I didn't wake up because the situation changed. I woke up because God held me through the night. That's why you're still here too. Don't forget that. It wasn't your strength that got you through. It wasn't because you had it all figured out. It was grace. Undeserved, unearned, undeniable grace. God held you when your mind was spinning. God covered you when fear pressed in. He sustained you when you didn't think you could take another step. Through nights where sleep felt impossible. Through mornings when you didn't want to face the day. Still, you woke up. Still, you're breathing. Still, you're standing. That breath you just took, that's proof. You made it through things that should have broken you. You survived seasons where you thought you'd never laugh again. And it wasn't because the enemies disappeared. It was because God never left. Maybe tonight, your heart is still heavy. Maybe fear still whispers. But I need you to know, just like David, you can lie down. You can rest. Because the same God who watched over David in exile is watching over you now. You don't have to control everything. You don't have to fix everything. You just have to trust the one who never sleeps. And when you wake up tomorrow, let your first words be, "The Lord sustained me." That's your testimony. That's your anchor. That's your peace in the middle of the storm. Let that be your Selah. A pause and breath. Not the end of the pain, but the beginning of peace. Verse 6. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people that have set themselves against me round about. There comes a point when the pressure is so heavy, the crowd of enemies so thick, that fear feels like the only honest response. When you're surrounded, not just by people, but by problems. Everywhere you look, something is rising against you. Bills, betrayals, bad news. It's not just one thing, it's everything all at once. That's what David was facing. 10,000s of people. Not metaphorical, literal soldiers aligned in every direction, encircling him like a noose tightening with every breath. And yet, he says, I will not be afraid. How? How does a man surrounded by death still speak life? Because faith isn't forged in comfort, it's born in fire. This verse doesn't come from a throne, it comes from a cave, from a man exiled by his own son, from a heart that's broken, a life that's bleeding, a soul that's shaken, but not surrendered. Fear wanted to own him, but faith stood taller, and sometimes that's all God needs. A soul who refuses to bow. A voice that whispers, "Even now, I trust you." David didn't deny the danger. He stared it in the face and still chose trust. That's not delusion, that's deliverance. Because the enemy's favorite weapon is fear. If he can paralyze you, he doesn't need to destroy you. But faith is the antidote, the shield. The holy rebellion that says, "You can surround me, but you can't shake me." And maybe that's you right now. Maybe you feel closed in, 10,000 lies pressing in from every side. People who doubt you, circumstances that mock your faith, whispers in your head saying, "You're outnumbered, it's over." But hear this, you are not surrounded by defeat. You are surrounded by grace. God has encircled you with his presence, his promise, and his power. You may feel pressed, but you are not crushed. You may feel struck down, but you are not destroyed. Because when God is with you, numbers don't matter. Whether it's 10 or 10,000, their noise cannot cancel his name. The storm might rise, the crowd might roar, but your soul can still be still, because the one who holds the world is holding you. This is what real faith sounds like. Not loud but steady, not flashy but firm, not fearless but rooted. It says, "Even in this, I will not be afraid." And just before the battle ends, it often gets the loudest. That's the test. That's the moment where everything breaks or everything changes. Let your voice rise with David's today, not in pride, but in peace. Say it again, even if your hands are shaking. Say it again, even if your heart is tired. Say it until fear loses its grip. I will not be afraid, because the battle isn't yours to win. It's God's to finish, and he always finishes what he starts. So, pause, breathe. You're still standing because he's still sustaining. Verse 7, "Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God, for thou hast smitten all mine enemies upon the cheekbone. Thou hast broken the teeth of the ungodly." There comes a moment when you stop running from the pain and you start crying out through it. And that's what this verse is. This is not a soft whisper in the night. It's a shout from the battlefield. It's a soul that's bleeding and cornered, but still has breath left to fight. David isn't politely praying. He's pleading with power. Arise, O Lord. That's not poetry. That's a broken man calling on a mighty God to stand up and show up, not just to comfort, but to conquer. Because David knows something that pain can't erase. God moves when his children cry out. He's saying, "God, don't sit back. I need you to rise. I need you to war on my behalf. I've done all I can. Now you do what only you can." And look closely. David isn't hoping blindly. He's remembering boldly. "For thou hast smitten all mine enemies upon the cheekbone." This isn't a wish. It's a record. He's seen what God can do. He's watched the wicked fall. He's felt the deliverance of a God who doesn't just watch the storm, but walks into it and shatters every voice of evil that dares to stand against his own. God didn't just touch the enemy. He smashed him in the face. That's what the cheekbone means here. It's personal, direct, violent. And when David says, "Thou hast broken the teeth of the ungodly," he's talking about God, disarming the very bite of the enemy. You know that attack that once had power over you, the thing that used to pierce you, poison you, devour you slowly. God broke it. He didn't negotiate with it. He destroyed it. And sometimes, when you're standing in fresh fear, you've got to look back at the old victories. because the past faithfulness of God is the foundation of future deliverance. That's what David is doing. He's not naive. He's not in denial. He's surrounded. He's betrayed. He's exhausted. But he says, the same God who delivered me then will deliver me again. So, if you're in a battle right now, and it feels like the enemy's teeth are bared, if you're hearing the growl of voices telling you it's over, if you're tempted to collapse under the weight of fear, don't forget what God already crushed. He didn't bring you this far to abandon you now. That voice of fear, those whispers of shame, that wave of anxiety that keeps trying to paralyze you, God has already broken its teeth. It might still bark, but it can't bite. This prayer, "Arise, O Lord," it's not just David's cry, it's your cry too. When your strength is failing, when your heart is shaking, when the night is too long and the pressure too heavy, that's when you stop whispering and start warring in prayer. That's when you cry out not with elegance, but with urgency. God, get up, step in, fight for me, save me again. Because this is not the end. This is not the moment you collapse. This is the moment you remember. And faith is stirred not just by what you feel, but by what God has already done. So cry out boldly, desperately, authentically. Let heaven hear the sound of someone who still believes in the middle of the storm. This is what warrior faith looks like. And the same God who shattered the enemy before will rise again. Verse 8. Salvation belongeth unto the Lord. Thy blessing is upon thy people, Selah. David doesn't end this psalm in fear. He doesn't end it in despair. He ends it with truth. A deep-rooted, unshakable truth. After all the running, after the betrayal, after the heartbreak and the fear and the sleepless nights, he lifts his voice and says something eternal. Salvation belongs to the Lord, not to man, not to kings, not to armies, not even to your own strength. Because if it did, we'd all be lost. If victory depended on how well we could fight, how perfect we could live, or how loud we could shout, none of us would make it through the storm. But David knew God is the deliverer. He is the one who saves, not just once, but again and again. And then he says something even deeper. Thy blessing is upon thy people. Did you catch that? He didn't say the blessing is for the perfect. He didn't say the blessing is only for those who never failed. He said it's for his people, the broken ones, the exiled ones, the ones hiding in caves with tears still on their face. That includes you, even now, even here, even in the middle of your mess. His blessing didn't wait for your breakthrough. It showed up in the battle. You may not feel it yet. You may still be surrounded. You may still be scared. But hear me. He has not withdrawn his hand from you. He's still writing your story. And it ends with redemption. It ends with restoration. It ends with him getting the glory. So, pause here. Don't rush past this. Don't scroll to the next thing. This is Salah, a holy breath, a sacred stillness, a moment to remember who holds the final word. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to prove anything. Because salvation belongs to the Lord, and his blessing rests on you. So let that settle deep into your soul. Let it wrap around your fear like a warm covering. Let it speak louder than the enemy's accusations. Let it carry you forward, not in your strength, but in his. Selah. Maybe today you feel surrounded. Maybe like David, you've been betrayed. But just like this psalm, your story doesn't end in verse 2. It ends with victory, with peace, with God's hand lifting your head. If you feel this in your soul, don't scroll past. Let this psalm be your prayer. Drop a comment that says, God is my shield. And if you're going through something right now, drop your prayer below. Let's lift each other up in the same spirit David did, because salvation still belongs to the Lord, and He still answers when His people cry. If you're still standing, it's because God's not done. If this psalm spoke to your pain, don't leave silent. Drop a comment that says, "God is my shield." Subscribe for more truth like this. Share this with someone who feels surrounded right now, because the war is real, but so is the victory.